All right, no intro, just gonna get right into it. Like the title says, soft doesn't necessarily mean diffused when it comes to lighting. What you need to know is the difference between specular light and diffused sources of light. As you may know, to make a light soft, it needs to be large relative to the subject. Now that's typically done by punching light through some type of diffusion fabric, and then that diffusion fabric now becomes the new source of light for your subject. Keep that in mind. This is the light setup I'm using for the following examples. Both are soft lighting. However, in the first example, notice the contours on my face. The specular highlights are more pronounced versus the other example where they're more flat and muted. So what we have in this example is soft specular light. But Ian, you might ask, I'm diffusing the light. Why is it still specular even though I'm diffusing it? Well, it's due to multiple things, whether it's the type of diffusion fabric you're using or the characteristics of the originating source. Here's a light with a reflector dish. Now, why do we use a reflector dish? Well, it's typically to intensify the light by directing it into a focal point. And as a result of this, what you'll get is a hot spot right in the middle of the beam, and it'll darken towards the edges. This is your specular light, where it has more intensity in one spot and falls off towards the edges. When you use a reflector dish and punch it through a thin diffusion fabric, that diffusion fabric is going to carry the same exact characteristics where it's hot in one spot and falls off towards the edges. So if this is specular light, then what does diffused light look like? Well, diffused light will be a heck of a lot more even. Look at something like a COB light or a flooded Fresnel light. It's gonna be even across the entire surface. There's no hot spots. It's not gonna fall off towards the edges. It is completely even. So when you use something like that and punch it through your diffusion fabric, then your diffusion fabric will carry the same characteristics. It's not going to be hot in one spot. It's going to be diffused. So to recap, when a light has more intensity in one spot and falls off towards the edges, that is specular light. When it's more even across the entire surface, that is diffused light. So in practice, take for example, you set up a 6x6 diffusion frame and you're punching a light through it, but you're getting harsh specular highlights on your subject that you want to get rid of. How do you fix this? Well, you need to think, how can you make the light a lot more even across your diffusion fabric? This is why something like a book light works very well, because after you bounce the light from the originating source, it becomes a lot more spread out, a lot more even before going through that next piece of diffusion fabric, your source. Therefore, the diffusion fabric will be a lot more even across the surface. Now, you may not have space to set up something like a book light, so in my opinion, the easiest and simplest options are to use something like an open face COB light, using a Fresnel set to flood, or just use a panel light. But yeah, that's all. Thank you for coming to my Yap session. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you learned something, follow for more free knowledge, and we'll all learn together. Peace.